So I have a question for you. What if Brian Wilson actually finished SMiLE? You know, the album that wrecked the Beach Boys? But the concept that we are going to actually go through in today's video will be, what if Brian Wilson actually finished SMiLE in 1967 as planned? Would he have beaten the Beatles at their own game? So it all starts with Pet Sounds in 1966. It stunned critics, and it also stunned the Beatles. So this is very well known. Paul McCartney has said it so many times that this album, Pet Sounds, is one of the greatest albums ever written, but he also says that his favorite song is God Only Knows. This album actually inspired the Beatles to put out one of the greatest, if not the greatest, albums, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, in 1967. This inspired Paul McCartney and the rest of the Fab Four to go beyond and take risks that Brian was doing. So they did. So after Sgt. Pepper was released, it took the world by storm. Brian, as well as the rest of the Beach Boys, was working on the SMiLE project that was supposed to do better than Sgt. Pepper. Because if it wasn't for Brian Wilson and creating Pet Sounds, then Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band could have never even happened. It was because of the inspiration that Brian Wilson made that brought the Beatles to this masterpiece. The SMiLE project was ambitious, right? It was something that nobody has ever tried before. It had so many structures of music, sounds, all of these things put together in one great album. It had songs like Surf's Up, Heroes and Villains, and Cabanescence. These songs would later come out in later projects, in later albums, and they blew people's minds when they came out. These songs were decades surpassing their own time. But here's the thing. If SMiLE actually came out in 1967 as planned, then it possibly could have actually overshadowed the release of Sgt. Pepper. Just imagine these headlines here. Brian Wilson, the true genius of the 60s. The Beach Boys leapfrog the Beatles. Or America answers back and wins. But unfortunately, that never happened. The pressure of Capitol Records getting on to Brian Wilson to put out this masterpiece sooner and faster, and the rest of the Beach Boys not getting on the same page with Brian, the sheer pressure of this album actually broke him. So of course, because it broke him, then the rest of the Beach Boys had to take over and give Capitol Records what they were demanding so quickly, which was the unfinished project and very rushed project, SMiLE. A stripped-down version that confused fans and critics alike. Meanwhile, Sgt. Pepper changed music history forever. But let's dream a little. If SMiLE did come out as planned, fully complete and full of the band's support, it might have redefined the Beach Boys, not just with the surfing stuff, but as the leaders of experimental pop in their day. As for the Beatles, yeah, they'd still be legends, for sure. But they might have actually put out something better, and it could have just climbed with expectation and just redefining music history forever that we don't have today. The Beatles and the Beach Boys climbing over each other's heads in every aspect after every album that they would put out respectively. Maybe Magical Mystery Tour would have been even weirder than it actually was. Maybe the White Album would have came out a year earlier. And maybe Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band would not have actually been a milestone that we can remember today. But here's the hard truth. Would Brian Wilson had actually beaten the Beatles? Artistically, maybe. Culturally, possibly, with songs like Surf's Up. But commercially, probably not. The Beatles was a global phenomenon that were selling not just great music, but they had charisma and they were getting at the culture, and they actually stopped going live touring and just stayed in the studio making great music. So that was basically a cultural stand against the norm, right? The norm. So yes, SMiLE would have been a great masterpiece, and we all think it would have. But beating the Beatles was a lot more than just putting out great music. Still, one thing is clear. Brian Wilson was a pioneer. He didn't need to win a race because he was running a race entirely differently. In the end, SMiLE is just a ghost project. It became a myth, a glimpse into something that could have been so great. And actually, in reality, it could be even more popular today than it would have been back then. Maybe that's what makes SMiLE so timeless. Not for what it is, but what it could have been and almost was. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you liked it, like and subscribe. And always remember, Brian Wilson is in fact a genius.